sends a very different message.
Thank you. Moving on to transparency, I think you'll be aware of the case of Clare Page, a mother in London, who was denied access to materials used to teach sex education to her 15-year-old. For the benefit of the rest of the committee, the lesson was provided by an external charity which had some very inappropriate explicit links on its website. She made a freedom of information request to see the materials, but was declined on the grounds of commercial secrecy for the charity. She referred the case to the Information Commissioner's Office, but they upheld the school's choice to keep the lesson secret. She's now lodged an appeal. Now, the DfE says that parents should be given every opportunity to understand the content of relationship and sex education, and schools regularly send home textbooks and worksheets that are written by third-party commercial companies. So do you think parents have a right to know what children are being taught, particularly in contested areas like RSE? I'm
completely with DfE on this one. I do think in these difficult and contested areas to withhold material from parents is worrying, and commercial confidentiality may have stood up to the Information Commissioner's legal test, but nevertheless, as a matter of principle, I would expect every school to be comfortable showing its parents what they're teaching.
And you would expect the schools to uphold that important parental authority over being the first teacher of values and contested issues like these?
I think this is where impartiality comes in. I think one of the hardest things for an individual teacher, say, who feels something particularly passionately and strongly, is to distinguish between the things that are universally accepted and the things that are deeply contested in society, and taking responsibility for respecting that distinction. On RSE, one of the things that I think sometimes creates difficulty is that it's structured, as is the underlying anti-discrimination legislation, for example, that some of it relates to, in terms of the minimum that schools must do. There's nothing in it to help schools understand what's the furthest they should go. So it can appear as though the various mechanisms are encouraging schools to go ever further. I have advised at least one Secretary of State, and possibly more, that it'd be extremely helpful if the guidance could be iterated to place some limits on what schools should reasonably teach as well. But I think that was that conversation, I think, was just pre-COVID, and I think it got slightly displaced by
words age appropriate.
Yes.
An awful lot of the burden in this space.
Age appropriate carries a lot of weight, and case studies and examples can do a great deal. As I think the political impartiality guidance has some extremely helpful case studies, for example.
But I think that's a very good point on the age appropriate. That is highly contested, and like you say, there's a minimum of you must teach the mechanics of sexual reproduction, but some schools take that to the nth degree about teaching children as young as year 8 about all different sorts of sex acts, which a lot of people would think is age inappropriate, but like you say, there is no ceiling. So you would recommend some kind of more rigid guidelines on those things?
I would welcome clearer guidance for schools. In part also simply because the burden on individual heads trying to navigate deeply contested issues, it's actually very considerable. If you look at the evolution in the interpretation, for example, of the equality characteristics defined by the Equality Act, the protected characteristics, almost all of them have actually become more complicated concepts over the last decade, and schools can't put somebody full-time on trying to keep up with this. They need real clarity from government.
Thank you. And so just finally on that, moving on to guidance for how schools deal with